This is the Talkin Bout the Hoosiers podcast, presented by TheHoosier.com. Welcome into another post-game wrap-up presented by the Hoosier. I'm Drew Rosenberg, joined by Staley. Indiana took down Lindenwood 73-53, but not the best showing from the Hoosiers, especially in the first half. Kyler, once again, it was the offense, really struggling for Indiana.
Yeah, I would say definitely that first half. It was really, really sloppy. A lot of carelessness with the ball. I thought I'm trying to see what they ended up turnover wise. They only ended up with 8 turnovers, but I felt like most of the turnovers definitely came in that first half. So it was a little sloppy, and I feel like a little bit of that sloppiness carried over from the last game against the Incarnate Ward. So I just think the big thing with Indiana was just the intensity and the energy was just super, super low for these guys. And really, it feels like the one consistent guy right now is Tucker DeVries. He's the Superman of this team, right? And we kind of talked about, Lamar Wilkerson struggled the last 2 games. He did not have a good outing. He did finish with 10 points, but was 1 from 7 from 3, 4 of 16. Just really, really struggled. He hit that 3 late in the game. Obviously, that was one you just felt like it needed to go in for him. But I just felt like the energy level was just really low for Indiana. They played a little bit better, I'd say, in the second half. But I mean, it just wasn't great. And it was just one of those things where you just realize that this team is just not a complete product. Even though they had a really strong first 3 games, they played Baylor really good as well. It's just there's a lot to work on with Indiana right now. And I think the big thing for them right now is the rebounding needs to get a lot better, especially on the defensive end if they want to play out in the transition. They want to get that fast pace going. But energy is just low right now. If they come out lackadaisical, against Kansas State on Tuesday, it could be a pretty bad showing and bad night for Indiana. But they are 5-0 now, but there's a lot to work on with this Indiana team.
Yeah, Lamar Wilkerson, it's now 2 games in a row. He was 2 for 6 last game out and just struggling from him. We saw him hit that 3 at the towards the end of the second half, and it was kind of like a sigh of relief for him when that fell. When Lamar Wilkerson is like hitting shots in Indiana, I think this team, is capable of beating a lot of teams, if not anyone in the country. But when he's not, they can lose to anyone too. It's that balance. Lamar Wilkerson, Tucker DeVries is the best player on this team. Lamar Wilkerson is the best scorer on this team. And when Lamar Wilkerson's shot is not falling, this team, we've seen it 2 games in a row. Offensively, they get in trouble. Tonight it was Tucker DeVries bailing them out, and he is capable of carrying the scoring load. But again, it's one of those things when Lamar Wilkerson's not going, the rest of the offense kind of sputters a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't think the shots that he took were necessarily bad tonight. I think it was just one of those things where, Lamar Wilkerson is not going to see a shot that he thinks is bad at all, right? So, and he tried to mix it up a little bit. There was a few times where he would cut off the ball, a backdoor cut that just wasn't there. He was pretty strong on his drives, just missed a lot of bunnies around the rim. So, but yeah, he's just in a slump right now, and you kind of hope that if he's in a slump this earlier in the season, he's going to be a lot more consistent as the season goes on, and that could be the case. But it was kind of a feast or famine with Lamar Wilkerson, right? And that was kind of how he was viewed, coming into the season. He's going to have nights where he's just not. He's just cold from everywhere on the floor. But there's also going to be nights where he just lights it up and he drops 30 points. So it's another one of those things where it's just like, you're glad you have Tucker DeVries on this team too, because if you were solely relying on Lamar Wilkerson, then Indiana would be really, really struggling right now. But, I'm just so impressed with Tucker DeVries. 25 points, 5 of 10 from 3, 7 of 15 from the field. And you throw in the rebounds and assists that he had 3 of each. I mean, he's just so productive in every part of the floor. He works his tail off on defense. He's not the quickest. He's not the strongest player. He's not the most athletic player, but man, he works his tail off. And he was the one guy tonight that I felt like was trying to get the Indiana team to pick up their energy a little bit. I saw a timeout earlier in the first half where he was kind of barking at his team, you guys got to pick it up a little bit. So just really, really impressed with Tucker DeVries. He's playing like an all Big Ten player right now, and he's as good as advertised. He's one of the best players in college basketball, and he's really put this team on his back right now when this team's really been struggling to find energy, to find consistency on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, another standout, Sam Alexis, 8 points, 10 rebounds, 4 blocks today, just doing everything again for Indiana down low. For a team that lacks size, he steps up in such a big way. I know they got killed on the boards again, but it's one of those things without him, it would have been significantly worse. And how much long? The question I have is with Reed Bailey struggling, how much longer is Reed Bailey going to be the starting center for Indiana before Sam Alexis takes that spot?
I still think that he's going to remain the starter. And I'm not saying that he necessarily deserves to be the starter. It's all about who closes the game. We've said it plenty of times. I think Sam Alexis is going to close a lot of these games. The thing is with Reed Bailey, he just really does struggle with physicality, right? If a team's really physical with him, on the block or whatever, he struggles with that. So I don't know if, Coach DeVries needs to figure out a ways to use him a little bit better, to a little bit more of his skill set of what he can do as a slasher or something like that, or even stretch the floor. But he's going to definitely be the guy that's going to start off a lot of games. And Sam Alexis came in rather quickly for Reed Bailey today. So, and I think you're going to see a lot of that. Sam Alexis is the best big on this team, and I don't think that's a question anymore. He's the most consistent. He comes in, he rebounds, and he works his tail off. And he's just got a really high IQ for a big guy. So, Reed Bailey, he's got to figure it out a little bit. He's got to learn to get a little bit tougher, a little bit more aggressive, and he's got to learn to, accept the contact that's going to come his way. Because once you get in the Big Ten play, that contact's going to be there every single play, on both ends of the floor. So it's a tricky situation. It really is. I know a lot of people would prefer that Sam Alexis starts the game, but I do like Sam Alexis coming off the bench because you need production off the bench right now for Indiana because they have a very, very low depth when it comes to all areas, on this team. So especially when it comes from the bench. So Sam Alexis is just playing really, really good basketball, and he's been just really strong for Indiana on pretty much every facet of the game.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like Reed Bailey is a really good basketball player. We've seen him do it this year too. It's not like we haven't seen him have a good performance this year. It's just Sam Alexis brings they're complementary players. Like they can both play together on the floor together. We've seen it at times. Sam Alexis is a little more physical and able to impact the game in different ways. Where rebounding, blocking shots, where Reed Bailey can stretch the floor, put the ball on the floor a little bit more, and do some more offensively. And it's just finding that balance for him, when to attack and, being aggressive, especially on the boards. A guy like Reed Bailey, 2 rebounds today in 16 minutes. I know only played 16 minutes, but he's got to rebound the basketball better than that. Indiana needs him to. With the way this roster is built, they're relying on him and Sam Alexis to be big on the boards. And Sam Alexis has carried the weight. Reed Bailey, not as much up to this point.
No, I'll be straight up. Let's talk about the rebounding. This team's got to be better all across the board when it comes to rebounding, right? Offensive rebound is one thing and everything, but this Indiana team, and Coach DeVries talked about, they want to play on that broken floor and stuff. If they want to do that, they have got to be a better defensive rebounding team. And I understand that they don't have the biggest players on the floor or whatnot and everything, but they've got to have guys crashing the glass. I give major props to Trent Sisley. He finished with 6 rebounds tonight, and he had 8 rebounds the last game. I saw every single play. He was crashing the glass on both ends of the floor, just playing with a high motor and just doing the little things that Indiana needs right now. But this team has got to be better when it comes to defensive rebounding if they want to play that the way that Coach DeVries wants them to play. And we've seen it when they are good on the defensive boards, they can get out and run, and there's not a team that can stop them once they're out in transition. Because, they can just score in many different ways. But it comes down to effort for this team. And it's just, it's things like that, right? It's just you got to be willing to fight for rebounds. You got to attack the glass. You need guys like Tucker DeVries. You need guys like Sam Alexis, who's doing a really good job rebounding. And you need an extra guy out there that's going to crash the glass. Maybe a Tate Conaway can get in there and mix it up a little bit. Or Lamar Wilkerson or somebody, but they need guys crashing the glass and just be a better rebounding team, because if they can fix their defensive rebounding, this team could really fix a lot of other problems that they have offensively, and they won't be as stagnant on offense at times, because when they get in the kind of a half-court setting, they move the ball really, really well. But, that's obviously not the offense that they really want to have. They want to be a fast-paced offensive team that gets up and down the floor, and it starts with the defensive rebounding.
Yeah, it's not going to get easier. You look at the next stretch for Indiana. You have Kansas State on Tuesday, Bethune-Cookman, which is another game Indiana should be able to cruise. But then you have at Minnesota, in Indy versus Louisville, home versus Penn State, then at Kentucky. That's 6-game stretch. With the exception of Bethune-Cookman, those are all games that are going to be very tough, very physical. against bigger teams than Indiana's seen outside of Marquette. You got to not even win the glass. I don't even want to say they have to win the glass. They have to be competent. They have to be competitive on it. They're getting out rebounded by Lindenwood. It's not going to get easier. And if they're getting dominated on the glass, it's going to make it so much harder for this team to win these type of games, especially against Power 5 competition.
Yeah, I mean, it gets real. You're going to have a tough Kansas State team coming in that's wanting to get a big win, in their non-conference. Obviously they probably circled this game. Jerome Tang and the crew, I mean, he's a really good coach, and he always has his guys ready to play. He has circled this game. Like, this is a big opportunity for them. And really, it just comes down to energy. Indiana is going to have really good energy. I know the crowd wasn't great tonight and everything, and a lot of times they feed off of the crowd. I know these 6 p.m. tip-offs are really, really hard to do against a team that you should beat by 20 points and stuff. But Indiana's just got to start off energetic against, Kansas State. They've got to set the tone really early, and they just got to be the more tough physical team. And I think if they can do that, they'll have a really good showing versus Kansas State. And if they can do that at a consistent level, they'll be one of the tougher teams. They could end up being a team that you just don't want to play. Once you get into the Big Ten, they can be that sneaky dark horse team that can really, screw some things up, in the standings or whatever. But Indiana's got a lot to work on, man. Back-to-back games where it's just you felt kind of watching this team after a really strong performance against Marquette and a couple of really good performances overall. But, defensively, they are still competing on the defensive end. It just comes down to defensive rebounding, and then offense, just being a little bit more consistent, finding guys, that can score a little bit more consistent other than Tucker DeVries. So definitely a lot to work on this team. It's probably going to be the case, until they get into Big Ten play. There's just a lot of kinks that this Indiana team's got to really, really work out before it gets really, really difficult. Once you start playing, Kansas State, and then you've got Louisville, Kentucky, and then Big Ten play right after that. So it's going to get real for Indiana really quick. So you got to be ready for it.
Yeah, and I think part of it's not a problem, but that Marquette game, it kind of reset expectations. It was one of those things like, you beat them by 20, and it was like, this team's going to be better than, a lot of us thought. And it's like,
and here's the thing, Marquette is not looking good. They have not looked good in any other game. I think they're 3-4.
Yeah, or I thought last I saw 3-3, but did they lose another?
They may have. Have they played Maryland yet? I can't remember. We're getting off topic here, but no. I mean, Marquette has not looked good, so that win might not even look like a really good win once you start building out that tournament resume.
Yeah, and it's so we kind of. A lot of us got ahead of ourselves there, and it's also we kind of forgot, this is a brand new team. It's a brand new roster, other than a couple guys like Josiah Miles and Josh Harris who hasn't played yet, Tucker DeVries and Connor Enright. Most of these guys have really not played with each other. This is like the first time playing together as a team, so there's going to be these growing pains. We're seeing it, and I think that game kind of, changed the expectations and made people think, hey, Indiana is actually really, really good and ready to compete, at the top of the Big Ten and maybe, make a deep run in March. And getting, got to walk back a little bit and be like, hey, you know what, this is year one for Darren DeVries. There's going to be these performances like we saw against Marquette that make people that are going to be really exciting. And then there's going to be some nights like tonight. But we got to talk about one more positive before we wrap, the defense. Another really strong performance on the defensive end for Indiana tonight. Forced 14 turnovers, held Lindenwood to 25% shooting from the field, which is a disgusting number. It does not matter. Yeah, it does not matter who you play. 25% from the field is crazy.
Yeah, well, Indiana still doesn't look very good when you look at 38%. It's still not the best. So, but no, I just felt like their defense was really good. For the most part, like I just mentioned, held them 3 of 18 from 3, 17%. That's really good, and you will win a lot of games that way if you can control, how many shots those guys are making from 3. And we would see last couple of years where, a team would come in and to Assembly Hall and shoot an insane number from threes. And, it would obviously keep them in the game. But eventually, they just kind of ran out of steam. And Indiana was just doing a really good job of just putting a lot of pressure on Lindenwood, just really making things difficult for them and forcing them into some really bad, tough shots. And, had 11 points off of turnovers as well. So that's another thing. If Indiana can just keep improving, with that, they can be a really tough team. It's just like you mentioned, we just got to kind of, temper expectations just a little bit more with this Indiana team. Kind of let them, work things out a little bit, and then hopefully once you get into the Big Ten play, things start to really click for this team, and hopefully they have a little bit more consistent depth off the bench as well. So still a lot to work on. I do expect, the last thing I'll say, I do expect that these next few days, between practices, that Coach DeVries is going to really, get at these guys and get them going, because they certainly need to kind of, realize their intensity could really set the tone in games, and they could really, just play a lot better than what they had the last 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, 5 days between now and Kansas State. It's what Indiana team comes out. Is it the Indiana team we saw the first 3 games or the one we've seen the last 2 games? That's going to be the question. But thank you guys for tuning in to the Hoosier.com postgame wrap-up. For all things IU athletics, make sure you're following the Hoosier on 3 on Twitter. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the Hoosier for premium content, including exclusive interviews, scouting reports, and access to the Hoosier Hangout message board. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel. We really appreciate it. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Hoosier.com postgame wrap-up. We'll be back.